Tonight, I'd like you to use your imagination as I tell you another story. Imagine a family with a blonde-haired, brown-eyed, impish little boy full of life and energy who loves digging in the dirt, playing with his dog, and anything with a motor. He is, as I'm sure you can imagine, the light of their life. Imagine the day he is diagnosed with a chronic illness for which there is no certainty of treatment and no cure. Imagine the fear, the anxiety, and the helplessness of that family. Imagine their relief when for years that disease is under control and that little boy thrives. He becomes an accomplished motocross rider and goes off to college. Imagine the day, in a cruel twist of fate, that disease returns with a vengeance, destined to shroud their child in a veil of disease until the picture of their sweet boy nearly disappears beneath its weight. They are frantic and alone and in their worst nightmare. They lose the battle and they lose their son at only 22 years old. This isn't just a story. This is my story, my family's story, the story of my son, Alex. And you can substitute any disease you wish, cancer or diabetes, and this story easily becomes a heart-wrenching tale about love and tragedy and loss that inevitably tugs at our heartstrings. We can instantly understand the horror and the grief and empathize with the family. But this story, my story, and the journey that's led me here today to share it with you is very different than what you likely imagined when I started. My son and my family walked our path, stigmatized, silent, ashamed, and alone. There were days that I did not recognize my son and days I didn't recognize myself. And there were many days when my husband and I felt helpless and hopeless. On August 12, 2017, we lost our oldest son, the child who made me a mom, after he lost his battle with depression and anxiety, turning to street drugs in a desperate attempt to feel better and dying from an overdose of fentanyl just weeks after a clean drug test. Alex suffered from mental illness, a brain disease as debilitating and impactful on a person's life as any disease you imagined when I started my story. And our loss is no different than any other parents who bury a child. Except the journey we took during his life and after was complicated by the burden of stigma and judgment. This cruel end to the infinite plans that any parent imagines for their child also stole my life as I knew it and created a rawness to the world that I wasn't sure I would survive. And we kept Alex's journey and ours a secret. When I stopped thinking that these things couldn't possibly happen to families like us, I realized if I didn't do something to make a difference, I would carry the weight of defeat with me forever. And Alex's death would simply be loss and nothing more, not something I was going to live with. Mental health problems are a growing public health concern, and more people lose their lives to mental illness worldwide than lose their lives to cancer. Just think about that. The fact is that over 44 million American adults have a mental health condition, and the rates of youth experiencing mental health issues continues to rise. Nearly half have a co-occurring substance abuse problem, and 9.6 million experience ideas of suicide. Over 56% never receive treatment, and 1 in 5 report an unmet need, including over 1.7 million youths who do not receive treatment at all. That's enough youth to fill every Major League Baseball stadium on the East Coast. Twice. Florida ranks in the bottom 10% with higher prevalence of mental illness and lower access to care. Compounding the problem is that sufferers and their families live in shame and believe they need to fight alone. Think back to my story earlier. With any other disease, we would easily open our hearts and embrace the sufferer and the family. We react sympathetically to images of people battling cancer, traumatic injuries, or even heart disease. But we don't with mental illness. Believe me, I know mental illness is not a pretty disease, but like other chronic diseases, it is a progressively deteriorating condition. The result of the disease, how it looks on the outside, the symptoms that manifest itself as behaviors, cause us to view people who suffer from mental illness as weak, lazy, weird, or even dangerous. We deem their illness a behavior problem. We're afraid of them on the streets. Talking about it makes us uncomfortable or embarrassed, and we are influenced by media coverage of tragic events committed by awful people with nothing to lose. In an effort to explain the odd behavior or crimes, we use titles of mental illness. And then to calm our fears or answer our discomfort, we unwittingly condemn any person who suffers and push them and their families further into silence and shame. So here I am, telling our story, demystifying the shame and willfulness we associate with mental illness. Alex could no more have willed away his mental illness than he could have cured himself of cancer, no matter how much he wanted to. And I promise you, he wanted to. But left untreated, people like Alex suffering from mental health conditions slowly lose their ability to live the life they and their families imagined. They become isolated from the community, end up homeless, in jails, in hospitals, or losing their life. We must begin to view mental illness like a disease, so sufferers and their families get the support and services they need and deserve. On your table in front of you are cards with dragonfly pins. You've seen dragonflies all over and probably have no idea why, other than they're really cool looking. Please pick them up if you haven't already done so and put them on. This pin was actually designed by my daughter and commemorated in honor of her brother after he died to change the face of mental illness. It's based on this photo taken of him after a dragonfly landed on his nose. It's how we choose to remember him at a time when he was disease-free and we could see the very essence of who he was. He was so sweet, a dragonfly landed on his nose, and while most people would have freaked out and brushed the thing off, he thought it was the greatest thing in the world. This is not the picture of a deranged criminal or someone to fear, but a boy with a family who loved him, who tragically succumbed to the grip of a debilitating and often deadly disease, and who I miss every single day. This pin is the basis of our family foundation, our dragonfly revolution, and our symbol of hope. It started last summer when I took a leap of faith and made our story public. Even my closest family members didn't know how Alex passed away, and we chose not to tell them until I realized if I wanted to make a change, I needed to start with me. We use this as a reminder that we have the power to transform tomorrow, to encourage awareness and open discussion, to break down the stigma and remove the shame, to change the face of mental illness, to prevent another family from losing a loved one to a disease they believe they have to fight alone. I am asking you, all of you, to use this pin to continue this mission long after you leave tonight, to continue to be the heroes of today by transforming tomorrow, turning hopeless into hopeful.